Thanks for choosing this free Anfield Index podcast. If you'd prefer to listen to this or any of our other shows without adverts, then now's the time to check out Anfield Index Pro. With AI Pro, you can supercharge your entire listening experience. You'll not only get all of our podcasts without the ads, but you'll have them far faster with our Quick Publish feature available exclusively for subscribers. AI Pro also puts you in the heart of our sound studio, with an option to listen to many of our shows live and interact with the podcasters in real time as the shows are recording. Upgrading couldn't be easier. AI Pro is available on all popular podcast platforms, and we have our own apps for Apple and Android. Just head on over to AnfieldIndexPro.com and get started today.
Hello everyone, and welcome back to Rival Recon here on Anfield Index Pro. Here's hoping you all had a great festive break and New Year's celebration. 2023 is now upon us. And the Reds look to get the year off to a perfect start with a win tomorrow evening, but they'll be expecting a tough battle for all 3 points as Klopp's side head to face a flying Brentford side on Monday evening. So joining us to share her perspective on the journey Brentford have been on over the past 2 seasons and how they've started this campaign so strongly, I'm delighted to welcome on a regular of the Beesotted podcast and her Game 2 advocate for Brentford FC, Taylor Dawson. Welcome on, Taylor.
Hi, how are you?
I'm okay. Yeah, I'm okay. The food groups, sort of normal food groups, are sort of re-emerging into my life now.
That's fair enough. You've earned a cheat week. I think the whole country has, to be fair.
Yeah, no, it's. I mean, I said re-emerging because I've not quite jumped back into that just yet. Because I looked at the fridge this morning and there was still a lot of shall we say, junk that I needed to work my way through. So I'm going to be eating party bits, I think, for the next couple of days at least. But then, they will re-emerge. Time will also sort of come back. Work will come back as usual as well. How's this time of year been for you?
Yeah, no, it's been good. I've enjoyed my time off. I'm training to be a teacher at the moment, so I've had quite a decent amount of time off, which I didn't get before. So that's been enjoyable. I mean, to be honest, you've talked about your fridge. Ours is completely empty. We finally made it through all the holiday leftovers, so we need to do a shop tomorrow, I think.
Yeah, no, it's not something I've been successful with, to be honest, so far. But I mean, also this time of year, of course, as I was speaking to sort of the Villa fan I had on ahead of that game just a couple of days ago, football's obviously been sandwiched into this period, as it usually is, even more sandwiched this time around, given the fact that the World Cup only ended a few weeks ago as well. I think Brentford, sort of one of those teams where you look at some of the players who went to the World Cup, perhaps not as heavily affected, and perhaps that can be an advantage to you for the remainder of the season. But what I wanted to ask you for was just cast your mind back really quickly, just the last season, finishing 13th in the Premier League. What were your overarching thoughts on how that season went? To sort of back in the Premier League, the way in which your style sort of worked within the Premier League as well, and then also, I suppose, what your expectations were right at the start of this one.
I mean, I think one of the things about being a Brentford fan is we haven't had any really for the last 2 seasons. You sort of go into it with no expectations, really. I mean, we always had, sort of faith in Thomas, obviously, and in the sort of overall structure of the club. Like we always know that there's a plan, and it might not be one that we get to see all the time. It might be one that we do, but we know that there's a plan always. So even if we had got relegated at the end of last season, we would have known there was a plan in place to deal with that. And, like I said, we're just sort of no expectations, really enjoying it. And even if the worst happens and we go down, I mean, that was always just, well, that was really fun. Let's crack on and let's keep going.
Yeah, it was interesting when I spoke to Billy from Beesotted as well, I think last season. That was one of the main things that came over. I think a lot of listeners mentioned it to me as well, that it was just that freedom that sort of Billy was sort of expressing a little bit in that obviously the journey that you've been on coming out to the league. I don't want to be disrespectful at all in terms of not thinking you're going to be competitive. You certainly thought it was going to be competitive, and you were more than that last season. But I think just not being sort of weighed down by expectations of having to achieve a certain level of success, given sort of the way in which the club has been progressing. But I do get the impression that as well as that sort of freedom, there are a lot of very serious thinkers involved with the club and sort of the plans that they have. Thomas Frank being being one of those really key figures as well. One player who, I mean, no doubt we'll be talking about him plenty from all sorts of angles, but Ivan Toney was another interesting sort of story last season in terms of people wondering how he would do sort of in the top flight. Obviously a hugely impressive goal scoring record, breaking all sorts of records at lower levels and then coming up and again being more than a handful. I mean, how have you sort of felt towards how this team has adapted to the Premier League?
Do you know, I think the way that the players that we have stepped up, like, I mean, you see, say, Forest, for example, they had to, really, they were forced to because they had so many players on loan, but have completely overhauled their squad. It's what did Fulham in, when they've gone up before, and just buying too many people. And I think 9 of our starting 11, when we beat Man City before the World Cup break, played for us in the Championship. So we haven't really had that sort of big overhaul. We haven't sort of bought loads of players in. Like, by and large, the players that have done this for us this season and last season are ones that played for us in the Championship. You talked about Ivan Toney. Obviously, he did incredible things in the Championship, and, he was very good last year and, deservedly got a lot of credit, I think, from sort of people outside the club. But
are you that person who has everything? The coolest merch and those must-have fan threads? Well, over at our Anfield Index shop, we've gone that extra mile when it comes to pimping up your Liverpool collection. From our popular range of bespoke design t-shirts, sweaters, hoodies and hats, to our signature edition mugs, prints and coasters, all provided with fast worldwide shipping. We have something for every red. We also stock official LFC merchandise and are licensed with the Premier League and UEFA to sell official iron-on shirt badges and sleeve patches. As a listener to this podcast, you can get 10% off everything with coupon code AIPRO10. Just head over to AnfieldIndex.shop or find us on Etsy by searching for Anfield Index.
I mean, this year he's taken that up to a completely different level, even with sort of other things going on for him. And I think the thing that people don't appreciate about him, who don't watch him maybe week in, week out and haven't watched him for years, is what he contributes outside of scoring and assisting goals.
Yeah.
I mean, if you watch when we defend the box, it's just as likely that he's going to win that header than anyone else. He will absolutely just sprint back as far as possible to go back and defend, and he enjoys it. He'll celebrate winning a header in the box, and it's those little things, his hold up play, all those other parts to his game, I think, that make him so important for us and make him such a good player. I think a lot of people only see the goals, which are brilliant, don't get me wrong, we absolutely love that, but he does so much apart from that. And everyone on the team does. I think when you've got a squad like we have, everybody has to do so much more. You can't just do your individual role and do it really well. You have to be able to do everything. Especially one of the things about Thomas is he's not afraid to change things up. He's very tactical in that way. We might play 3-4 different formations in the game. I think it was Everton last year. I think we chalked it up and it was 5 different formations we played in that game. And he's perfectly happy to do that, but it means that those players need to be capable of doing more than just what they do.
And I think, I mean, I was just casting my mind back to the reverse fixture of this one that's coming up tomorrow last season, where we went to Brentford, Liverpool, and it was, I mean, I think I was fully expecting a very sort of tough game, to be honest, despite what a lot of my friends were saying. And so, especially because sort of this Liverpool team is no longer able to control games from midfield, really, I was prepared for a basketball match, and it turned into a basketball match. And that was one of the games I remember watching it, and despite sort of, I'm a massive fan of Wissa. I think he's a bit of a cult hero for me. But Toney, I don't think he scored that day in the 3-3 draw, but the amount of work that he got through was staggering, to be honest. I mean, a lot was made about sort of how effective he was in the air, and how he'd give Van Dijk and I think it was Konate on the day a tough time, and he very much did. But I was stunned by the amount of work that he got through. And one point I want to make as well, you spoke about sort of Toney, how he adjusted to life in the Premier League. 9 out of the starters being from the side that got promoted as well. Thomas Frank, you mentioned they're not afraid to be pragmatic, to change things up. I think people throw around the word innovator at times, but I think he's very happy to do innovative things if they prove to be effective. I mean, what are you made about the way in which he's handled this adjustment, right? Because it's one thing being an up and coming coach. It's another being thrust into sort of the limelight of the Premier League, starting to get some of these big wins, big results. And then when things don't go so well for periods, do those managers look to change the way in which the team is approaching things, especially when it's been so successful for you? What were your thoughts on Frank and how he's handled it?
I mean, honestly, I think he's been absolutely brilliant. I mean, he's just signed a new 5-year deal, so it shows the sort of faith that we all have in him, and that not just as supporters, but that the club has in him. I mean, he's done absolutely brilliantly. I think you either Thomas Frank seems to be very Marmite to other supporters of other clubs. Some people absolutely hate him, but I think for the most part, people sort of respect. When he does press conferences, he's always sort of very open, and he talks as if it's a genuine person. He doesn't go, into massive sound bites. Oh, I can't talk about that. I'm not going to do that. He's just himself. And I think we've always responded to that as well. I mean, I'm not sure how much you sort of know about his history, but I think he lost the 8 out of the first 10 matches when he was promoted to head coach, which is not something that most head coaches survive. But we've always just sort of had that faith in him. I mean, we went on a pretty awful run from sort of January, February last season. But I mean, at no point I can imagine was he ever concerned that he was going to sort of lose his job over it, which is something that I would imagine most other Premier League managers do worry about. But we've always had that faith in him. He is pragmatic, I think, when he needs to be. But, especially last season, there were quite a lot of people who thought we were just going to go up. We were going to sort of park the bus. We were going to do, just anything to stay up. And I think the thing I respect him most for is he just always attacks it. I mean, we've got a great low block, don't get me wrong. And he will use it when needed, but he just goes and attacks constantly. I mean, I think we had quite a few last minute winners last year. We're talking about Wisa. I mean, he's a cult hero for us too, so don't worry about that. But that last minute winner at West Ham, he just always goes for it. He never just says, right, we'll sit back, we'll take the draw, we'll take the win. He always wants more. And I think that's obviously quite endearing to fans, and it seems to be something that the club is more than happy with as well. So
yeah, I think with Wissa, what I also enjoy about it is that he's one of those players who celebrates with sort of quite an indifferent look to him as well. This is my job. Come on, I scored goals. Yes, that's what I'm here for. That's what I'm employed to do.
He's a really interesting character. He's an absolutely lovely guy. I'd encourage you, if you're a Wisa fan or have been interested about him, there's about a half an hour interview that the club did with him over the break, where he sort of talks about his career. And I'm not sure how many people know this outside of us, but we were meant to get him at the beginning of last summer, but couldn't because he was the victim of an acid attack.
An acid attack?
Yeah, so he was nearly blinded. He had acid thrown in his face at his home. And so we had to wait for obviously any sort of medical clearance to see if he was okay, that sort of thing. So he didn't end up joining until the very end of pre-season last year. But he talks about that a bit in the interview, and he's a genuinely lovely, lovely guy, which I think we really appreciate. We have the sort of quite, I guess, well-known now, no dickheads policy, and he definitely qualifies. He was talking about, even when it happened, he was never worried about himself. He was never worried about his career. He was upset because it happened outside his home and his family was there. And that was the thing that scared him and worried him most.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's honestly incredible. And well, whatever happens with Ivan, it looks like he might actually be back tomorrow. But I think he's going to be the guy, whatever happens to Ivan sort of injury wise, or whatever happens with all the betting and any suspension that might come from that. So I think he can step up. He's definitely got a nose for goal.
No, exactly. And I think I'm always stunned at times when you do hear these stories, these backstories of footballers who've either come from incredibly sort of humble beginnings or been through sort of real periods of adversity or like moments like that in their life. It is often humbling, to be honest, and it also sort of humbles you in that if players have been through things like that in their lives, or come from incredibly humble beginnings to where they are now. Like I'm thinking of sort of the likes of Sadio Mane and some of the stories you've heard in the past about sort of those players and how they've risen to the top of the game. Yeah, it's not surprising that they're not really sort of bothered by a couple of people on Twitter or a tough trip to Stoke or whatever it is now. I don't know what the equivalent would be, sort of a wet Tuesday night at Stoke. What that is in the Premier League. Maybe it is Brentford. Who knows? But it's
well, it was Burnley.
Yeah, very much. Yeah, I'm quite glad that's gone for me to experience that. In terms of you mentioned Tony there, and the fact that you picked up what looked like it was a nasty sort of injury in the last game, stretched it off, has now been sort of confirmed. That's not as bad as feared by Thomas Frank. I'm also sort of I'm always a bit nervous to accept that sort of line from a manager, because I hear it very often from Klopp, whereas it's not as bad as we feared. It's not as bad as it looked. And then the player doesn't return for a couple of months or something.
Well, at least it's not just us, honestly. Like as soon as the press conference happened, we're all going, "Oh no, it's just Thomas again." I guess he must be very similar to Jurgen in that way. Is he just constantly be like, "Oh no, he's fine," and then 6 months later, he finally, comes back on at the 60th minute. Thomas is very good for that. But I think in Ivan's case, it could be something a bit tactical, but I genuinely think if Ivan was capable of playing on one leg, he would. He's just one of those players. He's just incredibly hungry all the time. I was legitimately worried. I've obviously seen players down and things like that, but that worried me. It scared me. It did look really, really bad. And unfortunately, for us, it sort of took the gloss off of it. Like we sort of felt we should be sort of celebrating this really nice win. And I think we all felt just actually can't really be happy about anything at the moment. But no, hopefully Thomas is not putting one on. Hopefully he's absolutely fine. Just because, like I said, I mean, he it's not just the goals he scores; he brings so much to it. And we've sort of proven over the years that we can very much change the way we do things, especially up front. With the players that we've lost, like, people were really worried when we lost Neil Maupay. Oh, how are we going to work? Ollie Watkins doesn't really fit that type of mould, but we just changed the way we play. And then again, we lost Ollie Watkins and Saeed Benrahma. Well, we didn't replace both of them. We only replaced them with Ivan. So again, we just sort of changed the way we play and adapt. So I think we sort of have to have faith in it, that if he can't go or if he is out for any extended period of time, that we'll manage. But it's definitely a worrying prospect if he's not back tomorrow, I think, or at least for the cup game.
Yeah, I was going to say as well, because obviously there is this off-pitch sort of issue that's hanging over him as well, in terms of sort of the gambling, some of the betting incidents that could have him out. I mean, based upon what I'm looking at, sort of what happened to Sturridge when he was involved in some of that as well previously, and some other players as well from the press. I think so, I've seen sort of time ranges like 6 months and that being bandied about. I don't know how realistic that actually is, but there's a likelihood that Tony, for example, will be absent for a period of time. Does that make sort of has there been a focus then maybe looking at this month that maybe there needs to be sort of some cover brought in for that situation?
I mean, I'm sure it is being looked at. It's certainly something that we as supporters have been looking at. If you go on any of the sort of, Brentford Twitter or anything like that, it's probably awash with forwards that people think we should buy. But if there's someone that we already wanted or someone that we already thought could improve us, they'd already be on the radar. We've always, the club have sort of always said, you don't overpay in January. People who overpay in January are people who panic. And regardless of the situation that we're in, we don't tend to panic, especially not starting the year in 10th place in the Premier League. I don't think we're going to panic. I mean, even just so far this season, Weiss has had to come in and do a job for us when we played Forest when Ivan was out.
Hello, I'm here to annoy you. I'm here to annoy you into listening to more of me and more of others on EPL Index. We don't just have the Anfield Index stuff. We've got EPL Index as well, which covers the entirety of the Premier League. And we have 3 podcasts and a whole bunch of really good writing on EPLindex.com. The podcasts are my own Two-Footed podcast, which is every day at 4 p.m, Monday through Friday, covering the whole league. We have A Tad Predictable, hosted by Tadiwa. You know Tadiwa, he does Anfield Index. He presents A Tad Predictable before every Premier League match week. And then Kevin De Vries and his crew on the EPL Roundtable, they're every week after the Premier League match week. So make sure you listen to everything we're doing on EPL Index and follow us there on Twitter at EPL Index. Thank you. Bye-bye.
So I don't think they're going to panic. Whether that works out in the end, I can't say. But I don't think that we'll bring anyone in who we didn't already want, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it does. And I think just one other thing around sort of players sort of coming and going. I mean, one player I did want to just touch upon, just given sort of the sort of story he's had in terms of his return to football, Christian Eriksen, and that spell that he had with you last season. I mean, I was hoping he'd stay, to be honest. I thought it was just.
Well, I appreciate that.
so much fun, and there was so much romance about it. And obviously, sort of, I hate where he's gone. But in terms of sort of what that was like as well, I mean, give me sort of a player of his caliber to be playing with Brentford, really enjoying it, like really sort of seemingly sort of part of that team, that unit, and so effective at times. I mean, sort of. What did you think of that sort of cameo that he had his Brentford career, and also any fears around when he departed?
I mean, honestly, it was absolutely brilliant. Like you said, it was a bit of a fairy tale, really. I mean, it's the sort of player that we would have never sort of dreamed of signing. It's, I guess, sort of what we do, like people that are overlooked for whatever reason. In his case, it happened to be a medical issue, but obviously it seemed like no one else really wanted to take the chance on him. Obviously, I'm sure the Danish connection helped. I think it came out afterwards that Thomas had rang him like months before and said, "Have you heard of Brentford?" Just to sort of plant the seed in his head a little bit. But I mean, it was absolutely brilliant sort of watching him play. Disappointed when he left, I think. I understand it from his perspective, but we did really enjoy having him. I think the biggest thing that he has sort of left behind a little bit of a legacy. Matthias Jensen, who, if you would have asked most Brentford fans, not me, but most Brentford fans last year, was just not good enough, was just not sort of capable of making the step up, has been absolutely one of our most solid and best players this year. And he's sort of stepped into that Eriksen role now that he's gone. Whether that had anything to do with Eriksen or just having a full season in the league or anything like that. But I think a lot of the players, including Matty, probably learned quite a lot from him just on the training pitch and, how to be a world-class player. And that's greatly appreciated regardless of how things ended.
Yeah, there were so many good moments. Actually, I was even thinking about, I think it was maybe Norwich. I was a player on loan from United. I forget exactly. Maybe it was Brandon Williams, and was like fully ready to start on.
Yeah, it was right in front of me actually. He looked so angry. I could see his face. He was so angry, and he just sort of lifted himself up a little bit off the ground, saw who it was, and just gave him a nice little cuddle. Yeah, he got a good cheer from the away fans that day for that.
Yeah, no, it was a nice little moment. And then just coming and sort of looking at this season so far, as you mentioned, sort of sitting in 10th place at the moment, been a positive start to the season, to say the least. And you look at some of those results, and I mean, some of them as well. You're speaking about sort of fairy tale and some of these performances that you'd hope to see in the Premier League. But I mean, the 4-0 win against United, I remember exactly where I was and sort of thoroughly enjoyed that day. So thank you very much for that. That was incredibly...
Well, I'm glad somebody enjoyed it. I mean, I enjoyed it very much. I was meant to be at that match. my husband had a bit of a unforeseen medical emergency, and we ended up in hospital instead. So we watched it from the hospital room. But it was very, very enjoyable. Basically what you said, it's, for us, it is a fairy tale. We don't really go into matches expecting things. Like, this is probably quite hard for sort of other fans to understand, or maybe look back far enough to remember. But even, on Boxing Day, just the fact that we can look at a draw against Tottenham and actually feel disappointed is sort of mind-blowing to us. Like, that is just incredible. And every time these moments come along, Chelsea last season, Arsenal last season, City's the big one this year. It's just sort of like living the dream. I don't like necessarily the term free hit, but we do sort of feel that way a lot of times when we play the top six. And to be honest, our results are actually pretty good. You talked about the 3-3 draw against Liverpool last year. Like, the Arsenal game, I wouldn't say was expected, but you could sort of understand it. It was like our first game in the Premier League. It was, the first time we ever had, a full stadium at our new ground. And you could always sort of see, right, might cause a bit of an upset. Yeah, I can understand that. But it was that 3-3 that actually got me thinking we might deserve to be here.
I remember watching the Arsenal game as well. Actually, I remember. I was in a bar with quite a few Arsenal fans. Actually, it was a Ghanaian sort of like restaurant, and got some of the. It was some of the best reactions I've seen, to be honest. To that game. Furious that Brentford were, incredible.
I mean, it was even after that. Like, it wasn't just like Arsenal fans, it wasn't just media or anything like that. We were all telling ourselves, like, right, they're not really on it. That's when they just signed Ben White, and he's turned out to be an absolutely brilliant player for them. But on that night, he was terrible. It was like the first game for them. Just loads of sort of reasons why. Okay, you can understand why Brentford might have won this game. And it wasn't until I think Liverpool that I was like, oh, this might actually be quite an interesting season. This might actually be really fun for us. And I mean, obviously it was, and it still is. So I'm just going to enjoy it for as long as we're here, really.
I'm looking at some of the other results as well that I suppose you'd class as sort of being really impressive ones as well. The 2-0 win over Brighton, given sort of what we've seen them do this season, the 0-0 draw with Chelsea, obviously the win over Manchester City, and the way in which that was done was just sort of masterful on the counter. Then, as you mentioned, 2-2 draw with Tottenham, where you can feel hard done by, given the way in which they came back into their game. At Tottenham, obviously, with their we refused to play first halves tactic being a bit tough for them today, seemed to be. And then, another impressive win away to West Ham in the last game. And I think naturally they're struggling this season, but again, a tough place to go away from home and win so comfortably, it looked like in the end. A number of really, really impressive results there. I was going to ask you just cheekily to pick your highlight. I'm guessing it's the obvious.
Oh yeah, it's definitely City. I mean, there's always going to be that time where you sort of, like West Ham last season, for example, you just sort of nick one at the end. And I mean, don't get me wrong, that feels incredible. I think the thing about the City game in particular, probably, like similar to the Chelsea game last year, we won 4-1, is it was thoroughly deserved. And I think that's the thing that makes it special. We didn't just sort of, two cheeky little goals against the run of play or anything like that. Like, I think we just performed really, really well. And especially again, I mean, Haaland, he's just been absolutely incredible this season. And to do it against him as well, was just brilliant. I think there's always the sort of excuse in the back of your mind, like, oh, well, he wasn't playing that game, or, but we just kept him very, very quiet. And I think, underrated signing of the year is Ben Mee, for us. He's been absolutely incredible, especially, thus far this year. It's only been the last sort of Spurs and West Ham that we've had the person who was voted our best player by fans and by his fellow teammates last season, and Christian Norgard, has been out for quite a long time. And our captain's been out for quite a long time. We haven't had Pontus Jansson, and we signed Ben Mee sort of in that slot. And I think a lot of people, he's a bit old. Oh, he's been playing at Burnley for too long. Can he really do a job? And he's just been phenomenal.
Yeah, I think it just goes to show sort of what you were talking about at the start in terms of the fact that yes, there's this freedom, yes, there's this fairy tale that you feel as fans you're going on, but there's a lot of methodical planning going on to sort of make Brentford effective on a game by game basis, but also in terms of the players that they bring in, the profile of the players. I enjoyed what you said earlier on around sort of the no dickhead policy, the unofficial one. That seems to be one that Liverpool have had as well over the years under Klopp, and it's certainly still has in good stead. So I think it seems to be a successful one. And then you're looking ahead. Then I mean, suppose just before we get onto the game itself tomorrow against Liverpool, but you mentioned Thomas Frank signing a new deal until 2027. A really good feel good factor around the club at the moment, the way in which they're performing so far. Tony on fire. Hopefully, he has to rest tomorrow evening, but has a great rest of his season. But I mean, you mentioned not having any expectations over the past few seasons, but do you have any now for sort of how the rest of the season is going to go?
I mean, no, not really. I think the most Brentford thing in the world to do is to beat Manchester City and then lose to Southampton. Like, there's a very sort of well-known, I guess, thing that we say is Brentford, isn't it? So whenever those weird, crazy things happen, good or bad, it's Brentford, isn't it? So I think genuinely sort of no expectations. I mean, I think at this point we would expect to sort of stay up. That's sort of, the level by which we measure ourselves, really. But I mean, no doubt that there are probably most supporters at this point sort of starting to look up a bit. I mean, the 13th place finish last year was incredible. Obviously, we had the whole, it's going to be second season syndrome thing all again before this season. But to be sitting in 10th and to have had some really good results and really good performances makes us feel like we're in a good place. I mean, we've had some pretty bad ones too. So the sort of games that we really should have won, I'm thinking of Fulham and Bournemouth specifically this year, that we don't want to sort of look back on and go, oh, that was the one that did it. So hopefully we'll be in just as good a place this year as we were last year, if not better. But whatever happens, and I'm sure we'll all enjoy the ride one way or another.
And in terms of you mentioned free hit earlier on, but how you expect Brentford to approach the game tomorrow evening? I mean, at home, under the lights, in the evening to Liverpool, and this is a Liverpool side that is working to get back into contention to the top four. I think a lot of Liverpool fans, the ones who have been realistic about it, think that that's probably going to be dependent on us signing a midfielder who can run, which would be very helpful for the next few months. I think just help the others out, because they look like they've run a lot over the past few years, which is true. They've run more than I think I probably will in my life. So I'm not going to give them a hard time for it, but I think they could do with some support. So, but it's not a vintage Liverpool side, is what I'm trying to say. And the success you've had against Liverpool in the past as well, what you've seen other sides do at Anfield and away from home this season to this version of Liverpool, I suppose you're looking at it and thinking that we can really get at them.
I mean, to be fair, I think that about everyone. Whether we win or not, I always feel like we have a chance. And a lot of that's down to some of the results that we've talked about, and against clubs that we have no business really on paper winning against. But we do definitely have that belief in the squad. And
I don't need a VPN. I've got nothing to hide. This is what I used to tell myself before I hooked up with LibertyShield.com. Not only is my home internet now fully encrypted, but I can now access all the websites I want, whenever I want, and do so from absolutely anywhere. As a Liverpool fan, I love to know I can now watch every match, regardless of whether it's on UK TV or not. My Liberty Shield VPN makes sure nothing is blocked and guarantees me super fast streaming speed throughout that match. You can get connected right now with their software package, which includes a 48-hour no-obligation free trial and instant access to their apps for Apple, Android, Fire TV, PC, Mac, and Android TV. Or go a step further like I have and get one of their pre-configured VPN routers. These small but powerful devices allow you to easily connect every device in your home to VPN, making it the perfect solution for smart TVs, Mag boxes, and games consoles. Visit libertyshield.com today and use coupon code AIVPN25 to get 25% off at checkout.
I just think, sort of win or lose, we don't get overly enthusiastic. We don't get overly disappointed. It's just but we do always feel like we have a chance. I think it's going to be definitely an interesting one tomorrow. I know from your perspective, it's very much, it's only, top four. We're sort of looking down a bit this year compared to where we are normally, and that's absolutely fair enough. But for us, we still see you as, we're playing Liverpool. We're playing Mo Salah, and we're playing Trent Alexander-Arnold. So it's quite a big deal for us. I don't know how many times you've seen Brentford under the lights, but we tend to show up well.
No,
so it might be a loud one.
Uncomfortably aware, yeah.
So I mean, hopefully everyone has a really good time tomorrow night. I think even in the last, let me think. So from City to Spurs and from Spurs to West Ham, I think we only made 3 changes total across those 3 matches. So I think it's going to be quite a similar one tomorrow. I think from the West Ham game, I think Josh Da Silva might go back to the bench and replaced by Vitaly Janelt, but I can't read Thomas Frank's mind. He does insanely crazy things sometimes, but they usually work out. But I think that'll probably be a similar lineup. Hopefully again, Ivan back. If not, I would imagine Wissa takes that spot. I think the really interesting one to watch is going to be Rico Henry, with Trent Alexander-Arnold and Mo Salah on that side. So our left back, he's one of those players that Brentford fans absolutely love. We can't understand why he didn't make an England squad, especially when they had no left backs to speak of. He's been absolutely brilliant and just one of those solid, very consistent performers for us. So I think that will be the thing to look out for tomorrow.
Yeah, I was going to ask you sort of. You mentioned sort of it's still regarded as Liverpool turning up tomorrow evening, and yeah, I think it's fans of your own club. You're always going to be more critical of your guys than anybody else, and I think these Liverpool players are still, they make up a large part of the best Liverpool team I've ever seen, but. I do think they look a little bit creaky at times, and could do. I mean,
that's the thing you're going to, though, aren't you? Like, I'm sure I read that they had actually played the most matches of anyone because you've gotten so far in the Cups and Champions League. He'd played the most matches of anyone last season.
We played every single game we possibly could, which was, and again, you come close to the quadruple, which is improbable from the moment that someone says it, right? Because there's a reason why people don't go and do that. And then you nearly do it, and then not doing it. That doesn't go down very well, obviously, amongst the forums, the WhatsApp group chats, everything. So, yeah, it's been a bit of a different kind of season for Liverpool fans. I'm not going to ask for any sympathy. I think the side is still capable of pushing their way back in. But tomorrow, I think regardless of what shape Liverpool would be in, I was sort of aware, given our first trip to Brentford, what this was going to be like. So I'm expecting it to be. I mean,
I can only speak for myself, but I think we were always not grateful, but we were always had a bit of respect, I think, for Liverpool fans especially, and for Jurgen Klopp. A lot of people, obviously, at that point last year when we played you, were still sort of writing us off, and you all always sort of didn't just say, "Oh, it's Brentford. Why can't we beat Brentford? This is ridiculous." You were always sort of quite complimentary, and I think even Jurgen said David Raya should be wearing a number 10 shirt, which was really nice. So yeah, little things like that. I think, I've always had quite a lot of respect for Liverpool and Liverpool fans, and little things like that, like not always going, we're Liverpool, of course it's Brentford, that's easy. It's been really, really nice to see.
Yeah, no, I think it's obviously great to see some of the camaraderie and some of the support amongst the managers as well. But yeah, I'm expecting a tough battle tomorrow evening. I'm sort of fascinated to sort of see how sort of Liverpool's chaos agent in Darwin Núñez does in that game. Just each and every game we watch of him it's pretty fascinating watching in terms of him causing so much trouble and yet sort of failing to score his big chances.
We have one of those. He just cost a lot less. His name's Brian Mbeumo.
Brian Mbeumo, yeah.
I mean, he absolutely causes defences nightmares. He can't quite get the end product. But I mean, I think, for Núñez, I think he's just
I think it's coming.
Just getting used to it all.
Yeah.
I think he's very conscious of how he sort of comes off, and I think the first match I ever saw him in, he was just absolutely just going to town on people, and he can tell he's very, very passionate. And I think that will serve him well. I think it's just a bit of an adjustment coming here. Like Holland's the exception to the rule, not the rule. So I think you have got a good one, and hopefully not tomorrow. He comes very good soon for you.
Yeah, I must say I'm not particularly worried, but I'm just he's chaotic at not at the best of times. So I'm just in what I'm expecting to be a chaotic game. I'm just fascinated to see how it ends up. Yeah, and hopefully he does find his finishing touch tomorrow. But anyway, Taylor, I appreciate you coming on and sort of sharing your perspective on sort of the journey Brentford have been on and continue to go on this season. It very much looks like an incredibly fun one, to be honest. So thank you very much for all your insight.
Thank you. Best of luck for the rest of the season. Hopefully for both of us, it will at least be a very good match, however it turns out tomorrow.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm certainly expecting it to be a lively one. I don't think it's going to be a snooze fest, to be honest. So, thank you very much. Yeah, thanks again for coming on. And for all the listeners who've been tuning into these rival recons throughout what is a kind of a strange period of the year, really appreciate it. And they'll be back again as normal from the 14th of Jan onwards, when Liverpool go to Brighton. I'm expecting it to be another very fun game as well, given our record at Brighton and given how competitive they've been actually over the past few seasons. So that's going to be another tough matchup for the Reds. But yeah, there'll be another rival recon ahead of that game. But in the meantime, do check out all the other great content on Anfield Index Pro. And yeah, we'll see you back again ahead of that Brighton game.
We hope you enjoyed listening to this Anfield Index show. Please be sure to subscribe to our channel so future podcasts find their way to your device automatically. There's nothing quite like fan engagement, and we'd love to know what you think of anything discussed on this show. The best way to get in touch is over on our free Discord community, where both podcasters and listeners debate the hottest LFC topics 24/7. Sign up free now at AnfieldIndex.com/Discord. You won't regret it. You can also follow us on Twitter at Anfield Index and find us on Facebook by searching for Anfield Index. Oh, and before you go, we'd love it if you could leave us a 5-star review on your favourite podcast app. It only takes a couple of seconds, and it means the world to the people who create these free shows.